Baie welkom by die groot ontbyt. Ons gaan nou kyk vir Alet Lemmer en Rian wat oefen in sy dis. Nee, wag, ons is nou internasionaal. Ons gaan Australië toe. Ons het gesels met Gary Mehigan. Hy is 'n chef en beoordelaar van Master Chef Australië, maar dis die Appetite Fest in Augustus wat massief gaan wees. So dit is nou vir ons luisteraars en ons kykers. Ons wou by Gary uitvind wat hom geïnspireer om 'n chef te word.
Well, my grandfather was the reason I became a chef, because my dad was an engineer. So he's a very calm, very measured individual, which is not me. He's very smart too. And my granddad was retired by the time I was probably about 14 years old. And I just seemed to kind of connect with what he did. You know, he was very happy, very tactile, was always making stuff, always engaged with the community and his career. And my dad said, you seem to be really interested in what Granddad does. Have you thought about, talking to him about being a chef? And I hadn't. I tried to, construct my subjects at school all around wanting to be a draftsman, an architect, an engineer. So completely the other direction. And as soon as I started making things with Granddad, whether we'd make bread or we'd go in the garden and pick, green gages or apples and made something with it. It was I loved it, just loved it. And I remember one particular day he cooked a chicken dish with tarragon. I'd never had anything like it. My mum is a fairly simple cook, and he was talking to me about developing flavour and browning bones, the kind of thing I do now as a kind of chef and a mentor. And I just remember eating it and just going, this is insane, delicious. This is what I want to do. So, yeah.
Ons wou ook uitgevind het of hy al Suid-Afrikaanse kosse of peselhappies in sy disse gebruik het en of hy gereeld ander lande se kosse ook gebruik in sy disse.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I mean, I think I haven't taken a lot away from South Africa. I mean, a kind of dried beef, a biltong. I think we got inundated with it on our first visit when we came to South Africa. But what I suppose I love about the South African food scene is the fact that it's changing and it's evolving as quickly as anywhere else in the world. There's some incredible chefs doing, amazing things, whether it's Liam Tomlin or David Higgs or, I'm trying to remember all the names, but, is it the Test Kitchen? Things like this, I think Chris as well at Foliage in Franschhoek as well. I've been lucky enough to eat there. So things that are probably taking some of that cliche South African food and taking it in a different direction. I also love that Indian trail of food. Well, that Malay and Indian trail of food that, pops his head up. What's the dish that's in the bread? Bunny chow, is it? So, in essence, that's part of the Indian immigration into South Africa. So they're the things that get me interested. And of course, stuff that, when I travel, I always try and take a little something. So, yeah. My passion at the moment tends to be Indian, Vietnamese, maybe local Australian Indigenous, which is, I suppose, what's happening too in South Africa, is people are tapping into local Indigenous and sustainable, which makes our food visits much more interesting.
As jy nou net ingeskakel het hier op die groot ontbyt, ons het vroeër die eerste deel vir jou gewys dat ons met Gary Mehigan gesels het, en hy is nou internasionale chef en beoordelaar van Master Chef Australië. Dis een van die gewildste programme in Suid-Afrika. En hier is die Appetite Fest wat by Times Square in Pretoria aangebied gaan word in Augustus. Dit beloof om massief te wees. So ek self kan nie wag daarvoor nie. Dit is 'n hele paar dae. Ons gaan meer inligting vir jou gee, veral hier op Groot FM 90.4. Maar ons wou by hom gehoor het die moeilikste dis wat hy al moes gemaak het.
I think challenges for chefs tend to be, important for me anyway. Where the pressure comes from is certainly not cooking at home or, even cooking in a restaurant on a day-to-day basis. They tend to come from big events, VIP events, or, when you've got, imagine a whole table of chefs visiting your restaurant, because you're supposed to be the place to go. They're the stressful times. And certainly when you're doing maybe a dish for the first time, or you've adjusted it, or there's something very technical and you're kind of crossing your fingers that it's going to work. I've had lots of those occasions. And if they're really bad, if they go really badly, I'm very good at Control-Alt-Delete and can't remember them. But certainly I felt pressure before, and they tend to be really technical things where it could be a lift on a puff pastry, or you're making a sphere of something, or a glaze, or something that is ultra fine or delicate or dependent, and especially dependent on technique, especially if you're doing it for numbers, because often you can do it for 1, for 4, but if you got to do it for 50, it's a whole different kettle of fish.
Dis lekker hier by Groot FM 90.4+1. En ons het ook by hom gehoor oor sy betrokkenheid by die Appetite Fest.
Yeah, absolutely. We're coming over as a trio, which is possibly the first time. I think George and I have been over together. I certainly know Matt came over, I think, last year. So this is the first time, the Three Musketeers end up on a plane and, touch down in Joburg for Appetite Fest. So, and look, for me, I think it's the first time involved in Appetite Fest. I've been involved at, in various things, in South Africa in the last few years. But masterclass, we're doing, some really exclusive masterclasses whereby I think they're certainly ticketed. So all the details are on the website, obviously. And we're also doing the main theatre too for the demos, each of us. And to be honest, I've got no idea what the boys are doing. So as much I can normally guarantee you this: George will do something exceptionally difficult and fancy, that's very creative. Matt will do something that's or lots of things that are quick and easy and ultimately very delicious, but don't always look like a restaurant dish. And he's always proud to say that he's a cook, not a chef. And mine tend to revolve around technique, or things that honestly, like right now, I just love eating. That's what I tend to do. And haven't finalized the dishes yet. I'm working on them. You might be able to see behind me, that's part of my office. That's about 1/6 of the cookbooks that I have in this space. So, and on those charts, I should cover them up actually, bits and pieces that are.
Oh, Gary? Gary? So daar het Gary gestop. Maar het gelyk, hy het so gestop, so perfek. Het gelyk het of jy vir hom 'n hapie kan gee. So Appetite Fest is Augustus. Ons het nou nie al die inligting nie. Ons gaan kyk, weet jy of ons nou vir Gary gaan weet of ons maar eers na ons kombuis toe gaan nie. Die volgende vraag, kom ons kyk wat was die volgende vraag. Ons het hom gevra wat hy gewoonlik vir ontbyt eet. Aangesien hy vandag op ons ontbytprogram is.
Are you asking me what I'd love for breakfast and what I actually had for breakfast? Because they're two totally different things. I don't know if you know this, but Australians are obsessed about breakfast. I'm not sure if it's the same right now in South Africa, but it's kind of our meal of choice. And certainly over the last 10 years, breakfast has changed enormously. So once upon a time, we all used to go out for bacon and eggs. And now we're going out for, breakfast salads, and anything that does not sound like breakfast is on the menu. So I'll sit down. My rare treat, I was going to say I'll sit down and eat anything. My rare treat will be I'll be looking at the menu and I go, look, order the fruit, order the muesli, order the poke bowl, and then I see eggs Benedict and I go, ooh, bad. And I go, order the muesli. And the waitress will come up, or the waiter will come up, and I go, can I have the eggs Benedict, please? but at home, it tends to be anything from, a bowl of oats and, berries, or a smoothie, or, a simple omelette, because eggs are not bad anymore. You're allowed to have them. They've realized that they're not terribly damaging to your health. But at the same time, I'll have a big bowl of ramen for breakfast too. I don't reckon that the time of the day should dictate what you should eat.
En daai was Gary Mehigan, en onthou jy kan hom vang 18 en 19 Augustus by Times Square, en dit is hier in Pretoria. Dis 2 dae van werkswinkels en oorvreet.